the appeal of Trump, regardless of like the nitpicky policy issues, is that given some sort of worst case scenario global conflict, I feel like I trust Trump more to avoid a catastrophe than I would Kamala.
Why is that?
I just think like he seems, for as much as I disagree with isolationism, but it seems like given some sort of heating up like the Ukraine-Russia conflict, for example, he wouldn't be so quick to involve the U.S. more and more and more and more in that conflict. If Russia is going to heat it up to the point where like American people are going to start losing their lives, or there's going to be like some potential of like a nuclear war or strikes in Europe, he would pull back and be like, you know what, fuck it, I'm out. This is not going to happen. So, and for a lot of people, that is like their biggest worry, is that we are approaching, whether you believe that or not, we're approaching some sort of global conflict, or like some global conflict is heating up currently heating up right now. Yeah. So do you agree with that? Do you think that Trump would be better in power to avoid mass casualties in the U.S.?
Well, I mean, like, there's a cost to be paid by any sort of foreign policy agenda. And like what sort of Trump is incoherent, but at least what sort of like Trump apologists sort of posit his foreign policy agenda to be is kind of a sort of soft isolationism. I mean, like, that's what America First, purports to offer. But the problem is then, like, the cost is then paid in terms of the geopolitical consequences that follow from America abandoning its sort of leadership role in the geopolitical space. So it's like, if America like abandons Ukraine, what then happens is that, Ukraine is conquered by Russia, and then Russia sort of conquers other sort of neighboring countries, and it sort of brings Europe into a sort of state of war, which then I think makes American involvement more likely, not less likely. Like if strongmen like Putin are just kind of like allowed to go on the march and conquer more of Europe, right? That makes a conflict, like I said, like more likely, right? Like the whole idea of why you fight proxy wars is that you don't have to fight a direct war. It's not, it's not the other way around, right? Like we're giving money to the Ukrainians so that we don't have to fight the Russians directly. We fight the Russians through the Ukrainians, and that if Putin is defeated in Ukraine, then that limits his ambition and sort of makes him go back to Moscow and realize that he has no opportunity for territorial expansion, and then maybe that makes him seen as a loser in the context of his own domestic sort of political space, and then maybe that leads to a transition in Russian leadership towards something that's more peace-minded and less bellicose, and that, which is like a win. Like, that's a W, right? It's not obvious to me at all that like Putin winning the Ukraine war and sort of getting like empowered by a defeat of American leadership is something that makes sort of a grander, more dangerous conflict less likely. And the same as like with Taiwan, right? Like, we want to defend our Taiwanese allies because we don't want the Chinese to feel like that they have an unchecked free hand in Asia when it comes to sort of territorial ambition there. Same with like in Israel and Gaza. We don't want Israel's enemies to sort of feel like that they've got the winds at their back, and that they can sort of like broaden the Middle Eastern conflict in any sort of dangerous way. So no, like I don't kind of agree with that. I think that like isolationism is always a kind of like naive fantasy. The idea is that because we don't sort of think and care and aren't involved in these overseas conflicts, that those overseas conflicts will just kind of peter themselves out and work themselves out, and they'll never sort of bother us, take up any mental space in our minds ever again. And I think actually that's quite naive. And I think that that's actually one of the lessons of World War II even, right? Where there was an isolationist streak that was very strong in America that didn't want America to get involved in World War II, didn't want them to fight Hitler or the Japanese. And then you sort of saw what happened, is that the period of time in which America was not involved in World War II resulted in the expansion of the sort of the destructive force of fascism in Europe and Asia.
I agree with that. Can't argue there. I'm trying to think if I can. I mean, I guess like I don't know. I mean, the fear of like a nuclear conflict is so unimaginable that it almost seems illogical to. And it's not. I guess it's not illogical to put it on the table, because it would be. It's like, of course, the ultimate fear. of any conflict, especially involving Russia, is that there's going to be an eventual nuclear conflict. But no, I agree with you 100%. Is that like, regardless of what Russia's doing, you have to. That's the U.S.'s. That's the world's strength. That's why everything's gotten better over the past since World War II. For almost every country that's westernized and become industrialized, is that the U.S. is behind them. If it was another country, I don't think it would have been the case. So, no, I'm with you 100%. Final question. Why should Canadians care so much about American politics? Because I yap about... I know the answer. I for my audience, not for me. Because I yap about it so much, as most Canadians do, and I always get the question of like, why do you care? You're not involved. So just give a broad answer to my viewer, my chat right now.
My like, I feel like I can defend it better than I think some like left-wing Canadians can, because like there's a lot of like Canadians on the left who like very clearly like hate America and yet are fascinated by American politics, and I think there's a certain incoherence there. But I love America, and I'm very emotionally invested in America's success, because I do think that America's success is Canada's success. And so when you see, as we sort of saw when we were looking at the economic data, like the degree to which the the Canadian and American numbers historically, the lines move in the same direction, because Canada is carried by American success. All of the great sort of technological innovations come out of America and then are adapted into Canada. There's a saying I said in one of my videos, America innovates and Canada emulates, right? So we have a very vested interest in American success, and I think we have an interest in American success when it comes to maintaining a sort of stable, peaceful global international order, like we just kind of said. Canadians benefit from the peace that America's dominant global position brings, and I think that we should not want to see that decline. It's just like, if you have a broadly pro-American perspective, you have an interest in the outcomes of the American political system. And I think that anybody that's pro-America should not want an anti-American government like Donald Trump's to come to power again, one that represents a kind of a self-loathing and would usher in, I think, a period of American stagnation and decline. I think there's no way in which Canada benefits from that. I think there's no way in which basically any country in the world, except for America's enemies, benefits from that. So that's my perspective. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, it also has to be conceded that if you're interested in topics like philosophy and abstract ideology and abstract sort of political discourse, which, even though I denounce it, it is obviously interesting to a lot of people. That is playing out in the American context. The more vigorous debates about sort of more sort of substantial, sexy, moral issues are happening in an American political context. So if you're interested in that, you have to kind of concede that America's where it's going on. It's not going on in Canada. It's not even going on in, England or France or wherever else. These interesting things are happening in America. But, I prefer, sometimes when you hear Canadians, particularly Canadians on the left, talk about this, the way that they attempt to justify it is they say it they frame it in negative terms, right? They say that anything bad in America will inevitably come to Canada too. So you have to keep an eye on America before the bad things sort of make their way north, or some way like America's like the coming attractions preview at the movie. What's next for us? But I like to sort of try to frame it in a more pro-American kind of way, where it's like to sort of say, like, as Canadians, we should be invested in a happy, prosperous, democratic, strong, thriving future for the U.S. And I'm on my, I'm on the edge of my seat about this election precisely because I will be very disappointed as a pro-American person if Donald Trump gets back in, because I will view that as reflecting, a period of decline for America. And, that's bad, I think, on its own terms, but it is also bad as people that share this continent with the United States and have historically been so dependent on American innovation and know-how and economic growth for everything that makes this country a great place to live.
Great, I feel it. I'm with you. 100%.
I've enjoyed your pro-American rhetoric, Brogan. I think it's very important to be.
I feel it. I feel it because when I was in university, where every young man gets radicalized.
Yes.
I never encountered anybody who could point to a material alternative to anything. right? And it's like, of course that's the case. It's like when people critique democracy, I never see them critique democracy and be like, oh, here is where this does it better. It's like no one does it better. Like, of course, a fucking first past the post 2-party system sucks in contrast to what could be ideologically. But where are we seeing this done better? What is the alternative? Is the alternative a dictatorship? No, of course it's not. Right? Like, you need to let these processes play out. So it's like, I'm going to defend these things tooth and nail no matter what. Of course, there's a better, ideological alternative. In theory, in lore, there's a better alternative. But it's like, as it exists right now, why would I throw out the baby with the bathwater? Because I think that because I think that this process could be slightly improved. Right? When someone comes to me like and is anti-democratic or says that like democracy doesn't work or like free markets don't work or like all this, and they point to all these niche problems, and I'm like, of course there's niche problems. Of course there's like these small issues, but like on the totality of the situation is that it works well. Yeah. People are doing fine. We're not killing each other for fucking food. So
yes.
Let's keep it there. We're the center of commerce and business globally. Let's try to maintain that at the very least. Just like maintain it,
No, absolutely. We have so much to be thankful for, and I feel like as I get older and as I sort of ponder my own sort of role in the world, one thing that I really want to champion more aggressively is sort of like the politics of gratitude, which I think is something that's sort of severely missing. The idea to be appreciative of what we have and to understand that what we have is not just something that just kind of like, as Kamala Harris might say, fell out of a coconut tree, right? Like it is the result of an inheritance of certain liberal traditions and institutions like democracy, capitalism, free markets, sort of compassionate laws and all of this. Like they're all very important parts of our heritage, and I think we have to be grateful for them, and we have to defend them, and we have to not treat them frivolously because we feel a little bit bored with how good things are on some level.
Sorry, JJ. Gratitude doesn't make money, so
No.
it's over.
Right.
Wes has fallen.